enlightened, authentic self. After helping so many people to open up to higher levels of consciousness, every person takes that road very individually. So this book explains the essence that it is your journey. And first of all, authentic enlightenment. It means that we are not looking to idealizations. For many, many people, when they hear the word enlightenment, self-realization, they look at the historical beings such as Buddha and Jesus or Krishna and so on, and then they realize, oh, they're so far away. I might never get there, because this is only for very few people. And that actually, it's a false idea, false belief that enlightenment is not for me. And therefore it prevents so many people to actually become self-realized, because self-realization, it means realizing the self, which is God consciousness, the essence of who you really are. And I want to emphasize who you really are, because even the word consciousness, it is a certain idea and concept in people's head. It creates a certain distance, that consciousness, what it is, and maybe it's not me, or maybe I know that it's me, but it's knowledge, it's knowing. So it's a bit cold, not as close. So therefore, the word self is much closer and more abstract, and even more authentic self, because that means it's you. That means it is your own self, yourself, you. Of course, it is a transcendent self. It is not the ego, not the mind. So we cannot grab it and hold it, it's mine. That's not the meaning of it. It is beyond that grabbing and holding or identifying as such. And it's a constant discovery that this big self is constantly pouring through this form. It's shining through this form. And this form constantly surrenders its ways, its patterns, its habits. So there's this saying that a continuous surrender, or it is dying every moment and getting reborn every moment. And actually, it's beyond dying and rebirth. It constantly outpours and shines. Because even dying and birthing every moment, it's like a process. But this shining of the self through you is not even a process. It just does it. Just like your awareness is here now and it shines through you, and all of you are aware. And when you realize that, you find that it's fundamental. And no matter what your mind is thinking or understanding or realizing, oh, I realize this right now. But the awareness is shining even through that moment of realization. A realization is a certain completion of the previous structures and finding something new, so to speak, new for you, but it's not new. Awareness is not new, but it's new to your mind. It's like, oh, I realized it. Well, good for you. It's been there already. So the same thing applies to the self, that it's a direct experience. It's not a memory. It's not a knowledge. It's a direct experience of the self. In essence, this is what this book is about. That is the key message. And now I would also like to introduce you to the key chapters of the book to know how it's structured. So chapter 1 is the enlightened authentic self. And that's where talk about what is and what is not enlightenment. The way to see the self and to be yourself as the deepest acceptance, and what is the essence of your authentic self. Another important topic is that full consciousness, which is the self, is natural. A very important clarification to many is that the spiritual adulthood starts with the non-dual integration. When one awakens to non-duality, that's where the spiritual adulthood begins. Chapter 2 is more about full consciousness. So we gain some clarity. We look at the awakened emptiness, the nature of awakened emptiness, and how to transform things into full consciousness. Chapter 3 expands on awareness, the nature of awareness and experiences. We'll look also at the 3 key steps of enlightenment, at the Amrita Nadi, the heart on the right. And there are some practices as well, the inner sun practice and feel your feelings practice. And we look at some of the other key topics of awareness, such as your attention, focus, the power of it, how it influences everything. And then what is experience? What is the essence of experience? And how can we shorten the distance of the focus back into awareness? So that sets the stage of all the highest topics and some of the key teachings of the years that we have covered. In chapter 4, we go into levels of consciousness. So we introduce all the key topics. And then we, in the book, we focus on the higher states. So we go from inner light with some of the practices. And what is new in the book, what is not on the website, is that we have key obstacles for each level of consciousness, as well as key processes. So you will find them here and some practices for each of the level of consciousness. So it's a very practical book, actually. So we go through each LOC in chapter 4, all the way to full consciousness. And then we also talk that full consciousness is not the end. It's not the end of life. It's not the end of existence. It's actually opening to life and existence fully. So many assume that you get enlightened and that's it. There's nothing else. Well, there is. You live, you are, you exist more fully than ever. And then we overview the infinite ascension and cosmology. Chapter 5 goes into spiritual myths and clarity. So that's where we look at the key confusions of spirituality, enlightenment idealizations. We look at diversity of spiritual teachers, that there are many different ways and many different approaches, and what they focus on. We have some examples here. The confusions of enlightening experiences versus the actual openings. When is the right time for non-duality and self-enquiry? Because many people approach it too early and they don't, it's not the right time for them. Subtle planes, how about those? And the path of devotion, the path of love, unity of all paths and openness. So there are a lot of clarification of some of the biggest questions that I have received in the last 10 years of helping people to awakening. Also, we talk about challenging energies, emotions, triggers, psychological and trauma healing. That's a big role that it plays in the awakening process. And chapter 6 is about consciousness integration. So it's about nervous system capacity, optional suffering, and importance of grounding into the present moment. There's a grounding practice about liberated, authentic personality and the heart's longing practice. This is a really sweet practice for everyone to try out. Then we speak about spiritual maturity and psychological maturity. These are really important topics, especially for people at higher LOCs, levels of consciousness. living beyond time and the instant now. How is the daily life in full consciousness, Sahaja Self? And one of the last topics of the book is the beauty and value of the natural emptiness as the ultimate nature of reality. It really nicely summarizes, comes to the end of the book. And then we have more info about myself and my journey, and something which is very new that has not been published before or elaborated before is that I have listed all the lineages that I work with, all the different yogic lineages, different beings that I work with. Then there is explanation about consciousness transmissions, and we have selected some of the experiences of and testimonials. And then we have elaborated and extended about the New Humanity Life International Academy. And the very last bit is the next steps to support your awakening after reading this book.